everybody, my name is Brooklyn, otherwise known as the Dramatic Otaku, and welcome to the Otaku Review, a series in which I review anime movies, TV shows that I watch, and in general talk about anime and manga, this usually in tandem with my Weeb wrap-up series, in which I go through every single piece of manga and anime media that I have read in the last 2 months. However, this is just the Otaku Review, so we are going to be talking about one film and one film only, that being Suzume. Recent release from director Makoto Shinkai, whose works you may recognize as Your Name or Weathering With You. Two absolutely fantastic films. Me not so much liking Weathering With You, but the visuals are fantastic. More so being a fan of Your Name. I must preface before this video that there is spoilers ahead for the actual movie itself, so if you do not want to watch, if you do not want to get spoiled for Suzume as you are about to watch it or you want to watch it, then I would suggest just clicking away from this video, as I will be going in depth into my thoughts, feelings and opinions on this series, as well as leaving major spoilers for most of the film. If you want a general reading of what I thought of this film, it was really good, you should go watch it. And if you are going to go watch it, you're gonna really enjoy it, especially if you liked Your Name. Anyway, the rest of this review has tons and tons of spoilers, so let's just jump into it with an overview of what Suzume is. The story of Suzume centers around 16-year-old Suzume, an orphaned or essentially orphaned girl living with her aunt in Kyushu, when one day she encounters a strange but hot stranger on the way to school. This stranger looking for ruins and specifically a door. Racked with curiosity, Suzume goes to the ruins that she describes, this being an abandoned part of town or an amusement park. I didn't quite catch what exactly it was, but in the center of this abandoned part of town, she finds a door, opening it to find a world that she once saw in a dream, or rather in her memories. Unable to pass through, she trips on a statue and unwedges it from the ground, picking it up to only find that it's not only freezing cold, but transforms and runs away. Shocked and rightfully freaked out by the entire situation, she runs all the way back to school. However, at school, Suzume notices a plume of smoke coming from the mountains that only she can see. An emergency earthquake warning is sounded, and soon Suzume notices that this smoke is not smoke at all, but rather a giant supernatural worm thing that only she and the mysterious stranger can see. Rushing back to the ruins, she encounters this very same stranger again and helps him close the door as the giant worm just so happens to collide with the ground, causing a much more impactful earthquake. Once the door is closed, Suzume then notices the man is injured and takes this man, Sota, back to her house to help heal him, when a cat appears at Suzume's window. However, this cat is very special, as it speaks, as this is the statue turned to a cat. It appears at Suzume's window and thus promptly turns Sota into a chair. The rest of the film follows Suzume and Sota as they try to capture this cat, Daijin, and return him to the protector of the doors, and on extension avoiding the deaths of millions of people by keeping the worms inside the doors at all times. Now, on my opinion on this film, just to preface my sort of opinion going in, I loved Your Name when it came out, but I wasn't a huge fan of Weathering With You, and I didn't even realize Weathering With You was by the same person before researching for this film. I only realized that the director was the same as Your Name, because that is the big main thing, that's the selling point of this film, that the director is the same as Your Name, thus it's a really good film. And the film actually does, I think, make a reference either to A Whisker Away or Weathering With You. I'm pretty sure it's Weathering With You that it makes a direct reference to, which I find really fun. directly referencing your own work I find just really cute. But with my opinions of Weathering With You, I really wasn't a fan. I stopped watching, I want to say 20 to 30 minutes into the film. I really wasn't feeling it, but I loved Your Name. I still really appreciate Your Name, despite the fact that I have grown out of love with the film. I think it's gorgeous. I think both films are gorgeous, but that's not really on the director, that's more on the animators. So in general, I hope that Suzume had some sort of same feeling as Your Name, and I can definitely say confidently that it does. Shinkai clearly has a narrative structure that he likes to his films, where in the first act we are introduced to our two main protagonists, and they are both potential love interests. In this first act they go on an adventure, and in the start of the second act, one of the two protagonists goes missing and is usually stuck in a kind of limbo. In Your Name, it is our female protagonist, we find out, is living in the past and ends up being killed. For Suzume, Suzume is trying to get Sota back into a person and trying to get him out of the ever after. In this second act, things are revealed about the second character, and the other protagonist goes on a secondary journey to save the limbo protagonist. They finally unite in the finale and then destroy the enemy that they faced in the first act, or get over the problem that was faced in the first act, concluding the entire journey. Also, they have something to do with a natural disaster or just something in nature in general. And I know Japan is commonly known to have earthquakes, but something about earthquakes being a supernatural cause kind of terrified me in this film. I don't know why. I generally don't like earthquakes. Something about it just really rubbed me the wrong way in a horror sense, if that makes sense. Especially when they did that giant fucking worm scene over Tokyo. That downright rocked me to my core with fear. Now, speaking on natural disasters in the film or in the world of Makoto Shinkai, something that I actually really liked within Suzume is the direct reference to Suzume's mother dying in the 2011 tsunami. And it honestly really surprised me that they did that. I really didn't think something like that would be referenced in a film, especially one where I was expecting it to be in a fantasy world and not in the real world. Having that bridging gap where it's just fully connected to the real world was really just something that I liked and something that was interesting. I know it is a real moment in history, but the level of detail the artists went to just detail that event and infer how Suzume's mother was dying, but not directly saying that the tsunami killed her, that it's all just an inference, it is never directly said. Like in the film, you have the dates of the actual event happening, you have non-diegetic voices, and also in the montage just before we reach Suzume's hometown, all of the little references to it being that event, then seeing the actual date on Suzume's childhood diary, if that makes sense, that, honestly, I really loved. It wasn't directly said. It was a lot of showing and not telling. It was fantastic. Story-wise, the actual movie itself was very engaging. Aside from the beginning where the pace was really, really fucking fast, the same thing happens in Your Name, where it starts off kind of slow and then it's really fucking fast and then slows right back down again. But overall, the pacing itself is pretty perfect. It didn't feel too long, and I think this is due to Shinkai's way of doing the two-act system, where you can feel the end of the first act coming but have no idea how the second act is going to play out. Art-wise, much like Shinkai's other directorial films, the landscapes are so wonderful and visually spectacular. I love the night skies in Shinkai's works, and honestly, they're just so gorgeous and beautiful. So other than a mishmash of different opinions that kind of link together. Let's go on what my actual first impressions when I first saw the teaser were, what I liked about the actual story, and what I disliked about the story. Beginning with my initial thoughts based on the teaser. When I first saw the teaser on TikTok, my first impression was like everyone else's, and that is hot shape-shifting chair guy. I figured that the movie was going to be in like a total fantasy world, that this guy, this shape-shifting chair guy, and I really put emphasis on shape-shifting because I really thought he was going to be a shapeshifter and not a chair for like 80% of the movie. I really thought this was gonna be in like a total fantasy world. She like falls into another dimension, kind of isekai-like, and that the chair guy was a love interest, maybe a bad guy, which we did kind of get that trope with the cat. Maybe in this fantasy version, in my head, we would have had like a Howl situation, since that's what most people kind of grabbed onto, that he looked like Howl from Howl's Moving Castle. And the whole story looked super cute and interesting. And while the result wasn't quite that, I'm actually really happy with what we did end up with. As I said earlier, I loved that the actual story was grounded in the real world, with Suzume's story, while slightly more like dramatized and fantastical, was real and specific. Because you see, in stories like Belle or A Silent Voice, where these backstories do happen, where people's parents die in flash floods, and bullying does happen to people with disabilities, and like mental health is something that's incredibly important, these events don't quite feel real to the likeness of Suzume's backstory. Probably because they're more common. It's often too common or too rare of an occurrence, so the impact is really softened. But when Suzume's story is told through only flashbacks and slight references and never overtly told to us by another character, it's insanely more impactful, especially connected to a real life event. I did also really like the dubbing of Suzume, as I did watch the dub, because as you can see, I have started to wear glasses because I was starting to be a bit worried about my vision, if I would be able to actually intake the film normally, because I had some vision problems when I was watching Kaguya-sama Lovers War, so I decided to watch the dub instead of the sub. In the dubbing itself, I honestly felt that it was really good, especially for Suzume and characters that like were teenagers like Suzume. There were like just little words and phrases that made her feel like a realistic teenager, not like this really overdone teenager like we tend to see in a lot of dubbed anime. Not that I hate dubbed anime, sometimes these really fantastical teenagers are fantastic, thus fantastical. Just in a lot of anime where they're portraying teenagers, it's never really felt like it's taken seriously, or it's done up a little bit, at least in a lot of the anime that I've seen, which when you watch comedy anime that kind of happens. But even in like other movies like The Girl Who Leapt Through Time and all that, some of the dubbing is a bit fantastical, over the top, whereas Suzume, the dubbing actually felt semi-realistic. Sometimes it was done over the top, but not completely over the top. And as I said earlier, in terms of the actual plot structure and ending, I liked the journey of the multiple random strangers, of finding and meeting multiple random strangers in random places, and then the return of that at the very end of the film when it was going into the credits. The look into the lives of these people and the abandoned places that they all have fond memories of is a really nice, intimate way to understand a person and understand their past the same way that we understand Suzume. So it kind of felt like we were understanding Suzume the way that Suzume was understanding all of these other people, and it made me honestly like the film a lot more. You get to see just these little bits of everyone's lives, and it's just really fun, and I liked that aspect a lot. It built a lot of connections to a lot of new characters, and you ended up caring about a lot of these characters. And as I did mention before, the big worm swirling over Tokyo, I big fan of horror. That scared the shit out of me more than it probably should have. Genuinely, it terrified me and made me really uncomfortable. Bravo! You get a bit of romance, you get a bit of adventure, you get a bit of horror. Fantastic. Now, what did I not like about the film? Because I do have opinions on that. Generally, the cat thing, I generally do not like the misunderstood antagonist trope, particularly in anime, because we usually don't see the character's actual motives, or if we do, they've just been a shit character and don't really deserve to join the main party. In this case, we didn't really get to see the actual reason why the cat was like so in love with Suzume, other than the fact that it freed her. We get a hint, or sorry, she freed it. We get like a hint that like it really loves her because like it thinks she loves it. That's the reason why she freed it, but it doesn't particularly make sense. But even then, just in general, I don't like the misunderstood antagonist trope. It doesn't feel like the antagonist deserves to be a part of the main traveling group. Yes, I am referring to the Witch of the Waste, because the same thing happens there in Howl's Moving Castle, where the Witch of the Waste is the villain and she joins the main party. I don't like it, she doesn't deserve it. I feel the same way about the cat. The cat doesn't deserve it. Speaking of cats, I didn't understand the whole black cat Western pillar thing. I get that it is supposed to be the Western pillar and it's trying to achieve the Eastern pillar. However, I just didn't understand its just sudden appearance in the film. I feel like it should have been stalking Daijin the entire time and it just wasn't. And so it's just sudden appearance and like making Tamaki, I think it was, upset. It just didn't make sense to me. I feel like it should have happened way sooner. Also, we didn't get a follow-up on why Soto's grandfather knew the Western pillar, other than the fact that he was probably the one to put the Western pillar in, or some shit like that. And if he did, why would you do that to a cat? Why would you do that to a cat? Then, speaking on Sota, is the romance element of the film. So I know Your Name is supposed to be a full romance. I don't think Suzume was quite supposed to be a romance, but there was a romance element and everyone was going in thinking there was going to be a romance element. This one was more ambiguous because half the time I could really just see it as a platonic friendship growing than a romance growing, but somehow whenever I think it's a platonic friendship growing, it's always a freaking romance, so probably should have guessed it. But in like the last 15 to 20 minutes, I'd say, it really hit home that Suzume was in love by directly sort of telling the audience, hey, I'm in love. I love this person now. I love Sota. Literally, Suzume to herself, to her younger self says, you will find love. You will be in love. She loves Sota. Now, whether that is reciprocated is ambiguous to the end. Pretty much until the very last shot of the entire movie where Sota finds Suzume again. But it is made pretty ambiguous. And I like the fact that it seemed like it was only Suzume in love until the very last shot of the entire film. Because Sota is like in his 20s and Suzume is 16. And on top of that, Sota is training to be a teacher. Do you not see the irony in that? She is a high schooler and he's trying to be a teacher. That feels like it should go on his record. And I appreciated that Sota wasn't like fully in love with Suzume and was, you know, an actual adult and understood that a 16-year-old being in love with like a 20-something-year-old is a little weird until the very last little scene of the entire film where he comes back to meet her, because it's insinuated that that's also another thing between Shinkai's works, is that the two characters separate then come back together again at the end. But still, didn't really appreciate that because hello, is this Sailor Moon? because we've got your age gap on the line. And before any of you say anything, yes, I know that Usagi was 14 in the 90s anime, whereas Tuxedo Mask was like in university, and it's different in the manga. I don't care. It is the same thing to me. Was it still kind of cute? Yes. I will admit it was still kind of cute that they fell in love, but it just felt funky to me. And do I still find Sota attractive as hell? Yes. I am a Hell's Moving Castle girl. I've been like that. If you go way back on my channel to like, I assume 2018, I mentioned it for the first time. I am a Howl's Moving Castle kind of girly. So Sota is attractive as hell to me. Also, his friend is kind of too. While I think it was weird, I do think seeing Suzume in love was a little bit cute. Do I think that Sota should have reciprocated it? Not really. I think they should have been a flash forward like they did in Your Name. Overall, the film nearly made me cry, and I enjoyed it. I really loved it a lot, and I liked it a lot more than Your Name. As I said, I've been slowly falling out of love with Your Name, and that is at the fault of my own anxiety. As a little bit of a trauma dump, in 2020, my anxiety like peaked at its highest, and it really hasn't gone down all that much. Like, I'm not having as bad of panic attacks as I was back then, but still pretty bad. And unfortunately, a lot of the triggers that developed from that time in 2020 are found in Your Name, so I can't watch it without feeling a little bit of panic and a really lot of unease when watching that film, which is really upsetting because I really like it. But this film, on the other hand, while it does have some content that does trigger my anxiety and does have similar triggers to that of Your Name, I still really enjoyed it. Like, really enjoyed it. And I love that fact that I can sit there and enjoy the film and not feel uneasy the entire fucking time because of my own shit. Personally, if I'm comparing it, I do think it's better than Your Name in terms of like the action and the drama. And while Your Name does romance better between the two films, I do think, as that was the main focus of that film, I do think the romance in Suzume is quite sweet and quite cute. Just not at the same fucking level as Your Name, because romance is probably not the main focus of this film. It's more of like a slice of life adventure something. At least I hope so. I haven't checked the tags of it. And generally, if you do like the narrative structure of Your Name, you will absolutely like it in Suzume. I can't speak on Weathering with You because I just couldn't watch it. But I would definitely give it a watch if you have the chance. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys will enjoy it too, because I really encourage that you watch this film. It's so much fun. And I really liked it. I would love to give it another watch. When it comes out, hopefully I will be able to buy it on DVD. That has been my review of Suzume. In general, I would give it like a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed this film. Well, is that probably because of recency bias? Yes. But I really enjoyed this film compared to the other film that I've watched earlier this year. I really enjoyed this film. Really enjoyed this film. I enjoyed this more than Belle. And I was really excited for Belle. I wasn't that excited for this film. And I really enjoyed this film. I should just not have standards for films. I should just not have standards. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Next week I will be releasing a speaking on Kaguya-sama themed video, hopefully. Hopefully I don't push it back again. Have a lovely day, night, weekend. Why is weekend always one of the words? Afternoon. And I will see you guys next week, 10 AM Australian Eastern. And I hope to see you there. Bye!